I went out to lunch with a friend last week, and in preparation of this impending TED Talk, we began to discuss social media and its effect on everyday lives. As an avid social media user, she claimed to use Facebook on her phone and computer a total of 3 hours daily. That translates to nearly 1 day per week, or 45 days per year spent Facebooking. You may call my friend an addict, but I call her below average. According to 2013 research by the Open Thinking Exchange, 18 to 34-year-olds use Facebook an average of 3.8 hours per day, a total of nearly 60 days per year. There's no question that Facebook and other social media outlets are an absolutely integral part of social lives. But what are the consequences of such drastic changes? Over Thanksgiving stuffing and dinner, my uncle claimed that such technology is melting our brains. My friend would argue it increases our connectivity. I'm here today to make a case that social media does not hurt nor hinder our relationships, but merely transforms the social game in which we all participate. First, let's take a look at just how huge social media is. Facebook currently has 1.35 billion monthly active users. 864 million of these users check Facebook daily. It is the #1 site in the world behind Google.com. Why is social media so universal? For one, we are an extremely social species. Maintaining social relationships is one of the largest driving forces in everything that we do. Harvard just spent $20 million in 75 years on a quest to find the key to happiness. Was it wealth? Ignorance? Lots of ice cream? It's the quality of our relationships. The driving motive behind social media is the use to desire and maintain connection and inclusion. So is this connection real? Does it count as valid? Caitlin McKenna used 3 studies to argue yes to this question. The first study used a psychological survey to determine the validity of respondents' online relationships. The results showed that the intimacy developed more quickly when started online, as opposed to real life. In the second study, McKenna followed up with the same respondents 2 years later to check in on those online relationships. She found that they were still going strong. The rate at which they were maintained was similar to rates of maintenance in offline relations. The third study, which served as the finale of her piece, sought to prove why online relationships had been so successful. She found that people who meet online tend to like each other better in the absence of the gating features of face-to-face conversation. The connection formed is purely based on the substance of the conversation, rather than the millions of factors we use to inaccurately judge character in person. So online relationships become intimate faster, last just as long, and are arguably more genuine than face-to-face interactions. Clearly, our everyday relationships are no less valid. But Jonah, you might say, we clearly behave differently and say things we shouldn't say when hiding behind a keyboard. What's the validity in that? Good question, audience. There's no denying that we act differently, but varying behavior in various settings is already universal and studied. Goffman's concept of dramaturgy dictates that we are social actors who put on a performance in different environments. How we act in class is very different from how we act at home. Our behavior at the office greatly differs from our behavior at a restaurant. Social media simply provides another stage on which we perform as social actors. Everything we do, whether deliberate or subconscious as these social actors, is driven by the concept of impression management, which is to formulate and maintain a desired image on a given stage. In this sense, social media can act as an incredibly liberating force. It allows participants to deeply customize their presentation of self, which can be exceptionally important for young people who are searching to find their true selves. This medium can be used to explore and legitimize their identities at the ethnic, sexual, political, and cultural level. This is imperative for young adults when moving away from home, as they develop new relationships and begin to change their sense of self. What does this online image look like? To be frank, your Facebook self is awesome, and your offline self is totally lame. You seek to impersonate Highly socially desirable entities, we aspire to be offline, but have not yet been able to embody for one reason or another. Everyone does this. It is a result of performing on a stage so visible in public, yet customizable. Social media can also provide a sense of solidarity other stages cannot. Populations prone to isolation, such as those with chronic illnesses, disabilities, or various gender or sexual preferences, can seek camaraderie in the shared identity that social networking can provide. Such online communities provide social support for its members, as well as a collective voice for those whose political and public clout may be diminished. Fair enough, you may say, but what about cyberbullying, internet flaming? With the rise of internet came the rise of internet abuse. Also a great question. Many experts would argue, however, bullying is by no means more common today, and cyberbullying is far less prevalent than we are led to believe. The University of Bergen published findings in 2012 that find little scientific support to show that cyberbullying has increased over the past 5 to 6 years, which is the same time frame as the rise of Facebook. And this form of bullying is far less common than traditional face-to-face interactions. We perceive bullying as more present today because cyberbullying is highly visible. It receives a large amount of attention from the surrounding community and media outlets, which in turn creates the notion of bullying on the rise. This is not to dismiss bullying as insignificant. It is absolutely imperative that we adequately deal with youth bullying. However, the root of the problem lies outside of the computer screen. In the words of Dana Boyd, a well-respected internet ethnographer, technology simply mirrors and magnifies all sorts of things we see in everyday life, and that's good, bad, and ugly. Social media does not change our everyday relationships, but simply replicates them. Our social networks, whether online or offline, function as a series of layers. The outer layers consist of distant acquaintances and weak connections. However, as you peel into the inner layers, you find higher quality relationships that are deeper and more intimate. Your inner core consists of 5 people. These 5 people are the closest and share the greatest connection with you. The next layer extends out to 50 to 150, 500, and eventually out to 1,500 people. Robin Dunbar, a professor of brilliance at University of Oxford, coined Dunbar's number, which is 150. This number is the approximate limit of people you really know. If you bumped into them at a bar in Hong Kong at 3 a.m., you wouldn't feel embarrassed saying hello because you have a personal history. I know, we've all been there. The moral of the story is that there's a clear cognitive limit to how many meaningful relationships we can hold. Regardless of whether you have 200 Facebook friends or 2,000, these social layers still exist. Having an immense amount of online friends doesn't, quote, dilute your social network, but rather tends to add people to the peripheral layers of the social onion. But Professor Kurman-faber, you may ask, nonverbal behavior is the most crucial aspect of communication. How can we construct meaning in a world where nonverbal communication doesn't exist? Also a very fair proposition. However, it is structured around the myth that text-based communication contains no nonverbal cues. In reality, embedded meaning is overtly abundant. Simple choice of punctuation can differentiate between angry and calm. Decisions such as whether to use a period can define our tone based on unwritten norms, just like in face-to-face interaction. There are dozens of ways to write okay, and different uses imply different meanings. LOLs and ha-has and countless other short phrases carry subtle meaning that dictate the tone of our interactions online. Even deciding which medium to use upon outreach, such as Facebook, text messaging, email, Twitter, helps dictate the direction of our conversation. Hopefully now I've fully convinced you. Social media does not hurt our relationships, but rather transforms the game. It provides yet another stage on which we act as part of this social sphere. On this stage, we put forth awesome, customizable versions of ourselves, unhindered by the confines of the offline world. I like to remind everyone how many people use Facebook. 1.35 billion users worldwide. We've already seen enormous benefits of such connectivity. political movements, news access, and an abundance of cat videos. By recognizing Facebook as a platform that reflects behavior rather than changing it, we can fully recognize its potential to amplify the good behaviors of the world rather than the bad. Thank you.